a choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a ride.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expanding reality.
A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Expanding reality.
Welcome to Expanding Reality. I am your host, Brandon Thomas. On this episode, guys, I got to bring back Amy Belair. She is incredible, reads Akashic readings. She does all sorts of incredible stuff, guys. All the ways, of course, to find her and her podcast, The Third Eye Awakening, which can be found anywhere podcasts are found, will, of course, be linked in the bottom of the show description down there. So you guys just go click, check her out. While you are out there checking her out, her Instagram profile will be located there as well, North Star. Go ahead and wish her and her family congratulations on their new baby. We just got word that she just had her little baby boy. Not a little baby boy at all. It's a huge baby. But we're super grateful that she is happy and healthy, and so is baby. So while you guys are going to check her and her podcast out and to go check out some of the programs that she does, which are incredible, go wish her and her family congratulations over there, guys. So without any further ado, congratulations, Amy. Amy Belair. All right, ladies and gentlemen, extremely excited to get Amy Belair back on the show. How are you today, Amy?
I'm doing great. I'm having a fantastic day so far, and it's made so much better by getting the opportunity to have another conversation with you, Brandon.
You kidding me? I mean, this is what it is, right? It's not content. I just wanted to catch up with you. I just wanted to say how you're doing and say hi, because you're killing it, dude. You are killing it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and you're pregnant as fuck. So how's that going?
Yeah. It's going really well. This little being feels, I wish I could show you, but I know it's pretty big.
Good Lord.
Pretty big belly, but I don't know, this baby feels like cozy in here still. I think I got a couple weeks left to go.
Still cooking. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, that's incredible. And you're waiting to find out?
Yes.
Okay, got you. Do you have some names picked out already?
I do, yeah.
Okay, cool. You want to reveal them or no?
Well, if it's a girl, so they're both Irish Gaelic. If it's a girl, my plan is that it's Saoirse Astrid. And if it's a boy, it'll be Kella William or William Kella. But I don't know that my husband agrees with that. Like, he keeps saying things like Kang and Thrawn and stuff. And I'm just like, okay, honey, well, I mean, I'm doing all the work, so...
I don't know if anybody...
I shall be the namer.
Yeah, well, that's fair. I don't know if anybody since Vikings have had that conversation about this specifically, right? You could picture Vikings back in the day going, "No, I want Khan," and you're like, "No, I want." That's great. Yeah, right. Well, cool. Well, so, ladies and gentlemen, of course, you know that Amy's been on before. Good friend of mine, good friend of the show, and you do a group that is fantastic on Facebook called Soul Space. And it is so much fun. Everybody on there is delightful. So shout out to all the Soul Space members. You guys are wonderful. And we have a good time interacting with you guys. Y'all are so sweet. They're so wonderful. And so if you're not on Soul Space, go out there and join it. It is really, really cool. It's a great community. So, yeah. Okay, so I got you back on because, like I said, I just wanted to talk to you and say hi and catch up with you. But let's talk about this simulation shit. Let's talk about NPCs because this has been something that's been on my mind a lot lately. So what are your thoughts on just the concept of an NPC or a non-playing character establishing, like, let's just go with the thought experiment that we're already aware that we live in a simulation. Okay, we figured that out. And now, is everyone around us real in your mind?
Yeah, so I had this conversation a while ago, a couple months ago, I think, with Will, aka Ketsuban of the Wrong Warp podcast. And at the time I said that I have not met a person that I'm like, you're just empty. Like, I don't think that there's a consciousness in you. And we got into like how I think Definitely, though, there are people that are running a tape. So it's almost like the soul has abdicated. It's like set aside, and there's a tape running, and I think it's a trauma response. But that being said, I'm also aware that I have the incredible fortune of magnetizing like really delightful people into my world, such as yourself, like truly. And so sometimes I'm like, are there NPCs and I just haven't met them? That's what I'm a little bit stumped on. I've met people for sure that are not driving the car, and they're more like, it feels more like a possession to a degree. But I don't know if that's the same thing as an NPC. Like an actual, and maybe I'm misinterpreting, but to me, an NPC is like literally a character that has nothing other than just to, I don't know, be part of the background or like repeat, something like one line, on behalf of the simulation. Have you met one? Do you think you've met an NPC?
I'm sure of it. Now, to what you just said, I think that there may be different levels of non-playing characters around here, right? So if you're in a grocery store or something like that, or in a public place, and you see somebody way off in the distance that you're not going to go towards, you're not going to interact with, you see them like just walking out of a door or, heading out to their car or something like that, then that might be one of those far distant NPCs but also the game may just render a story for them whenever you approach them or interact with them, right? It's not off the table.
Totally.
So let's say, for instance, I meet people like all the time, like I'm just social, I just like people. So I just say hi to people. If there's an old lady or just a lady or something like that, I was raised well. So if somebody's putting heavy stuff in their car, I go over and offer to help, stuff like that. And then we'll have like a little interaction, but maybe that's it, right? Maybe there's just small little characters that play a minor role. All of it, I think, is just for you to have the experience of realizing who you truly are. So in that moment, I could have just walked by that lady, NPC or not. It doesn't mean, and I guess I want to put this out there for everybody listening, that NPC doesn't mean treat people like shit just because they're not real. And I've got kind of a thing I'll bring up later because it's a thing I wanted to tell you about, but not yet. About these characters out there that maybe they're just playing a role, like you said, or they've got specific lines to come into your story at specific times. Even the people that flip you off on the freeway or whatever, that's a person that's here to allow you the opportunity to realize who you really are or to choose a new version of yourself. The one that would have flipped the person off before, maybe now you've changed because of this opportunity. You just go, man, you know what? Just be careful out there. I apologize, or it wasn't my fault, or something like that. People can be a little hard on themselves with stuff like that, but it's the opportunity for you to realize maybe a new, greater version of who you really are, and that's all these characters are here to do. One thing that's interesting, and I talked about this with Elizabeth, the meta mama from TikTok. I met her on TikTok. She's wonderful. She has incredible stuff to say.
That was a great episode.
She did all the heavy lifting. I've got to hook y'all up. I think she would be great on your show too. What we had talked about on there is the Mr. Smith idea. Have you heard of this?
That was my first time, and it blew my mind. I was like, whoa, I have seen that. I've seen that.
That's interesting. Okay, so what have you seen when that happened? What was your situation when you saw that?
Well, it's funny. The most common one that comes to mind, we actually talked about in our first conversation, was the flat earth response, where somebody who you otherwise can have a total open discussion with, who is not somebody that you consider to be closed-minded or anything like that, and you bring it up. And for some reason, that one is so, this is why I think probably the earth is not a globe. I don't know what it is, but it's probably not a globe, because instantaneously it's like a flip switches. A switch flips? Yes, a switch flips. And all of a sudden they're like, no, this is not like the earth is a globe.
Yes.
If you try to engage the conversation, like, okay, but how do you know, or anything? It's just like there's nowhere to go. You're just hitting a wall, and it's crazy. But then they kind of come back down later and can continue having normal conversations with them. And I see that with a lot of people around this topic.
Yes, especially flat Earth. And so what we were talking about on that episode as well is, I did a flat Earth episode with David Weiss. He was fantastic. It was incredible. And
That
the
was.
comment section, thank you. He did all the heavy lifting. I don't feel like I do much at all. Everybody else like you do wonderful. I'm just gonna
Podcasting
chill.
is the best day.
It's great. I'm just like, do your thing, man. So yeah, and it was insane the amount of just comments and hate and like name calling and stuff like that. I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion, right? And some people would actually make some pretty good points, and they would get down to well, of course they don't fly over Antarctica because there's nowhere for an emergency landing. Good point. And then they would tack on the end of like, you fucking retard or something like that. I'm like, come on, man. Like you don't have, like, just make your point. You don't have to be a dickhead at the end of it. You know, that's what loses it for me. That's what discredits the idea, honestly, is I'm just like, okay, you're just an asshole. Got it. And I will say this too, 99.9% of people who immediately talk shit about it or switch to the Mr. Smith element have never looked at it or seriously considered it. That's what's so interesting, because it's immediately erroneous. It's immediately something people are sitting there going, nope, this is bullshit. I've got to call you a fucking retard at the end of it. And that's where I'm going to leave it. So what do you think this plane is if we are in a simulation? And so do you think that it could be both?
Like both a globe and a flat plane?
Yeah.
That's a good question. You know what? I actually don't think it's a globe. I really do think that's all bullshit. Doesn't mean I know what it is. At this point, I think my sense is like, it actually is a realm insofar as in a video game, like so if you take World of Warcraft, I've never been a World of Warcrafter, but I had a boyfriend that was like huge into it. And his idea of a great weekend together was for him to play World of Warcraft while I just hung out and did my thing.
Sounds hot.
So I got to watch a lot of it over his shoulder, but it's a whole complex like environment, right? But it gets simulated as your character enters, or my son really loves Red Dead Redemption. Same, it's a beautifully complex rendered environment, but it gets rendered as your character enters that area. It's neither a plane nor a globe. It's just a rendered environment. And I think that's what we're actually in, rather than a physical shape. Because I think that's all physical reality is anyway. Like we have this impression that like this desk I'm sitting at is solid, but I was going to say we know, but we believe. I think I know based on my research and my trips into the Akasha that every atom is 99.9% empty space between the electrons and the nucleus, which is made of protons and neutrons. And so if that's the case, then mostly everything that we experience is empty space. And when you come down to the subatomic particles, they're just little tiny parcels of energy that are vibrating. And I think that the third dimension is a realm where the vibration slows down such that the energy can take on a pattern that's pretty stable because it's slowed down into this little bandwidth. And so it takes on a sense of stability, but ultimately it's just energy patterns until we decode it, or something with the physical body, like the apparatus, the equipment to decode and translate, like unzip the zip file kind of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Like an observer effect in quantum physics, because that's what they say. The Schrodinger's cat thing. Is it dead or alive? Yes. Until you observe it, it's both potentials. It's all potentiality, right? And so, the slow vibration thing makes me think of like calm water versus a rushing river. So if you've got a calm water, unless it's acted on or observed or you drop a rock into it, it's very, very stable and calm and looks pretty solid, you know? But then a river takes on many forms, and it's undulating and it's fluctuating. It's kinetic, right?
Yeah.
So with the video game analogy, and I think that this is what's interesting about the whole being able to wrap our minds around NPCs or a simulated reality or something like that, because it's almost like the Matrix or the reality kind of gave us a mini example of what our environment may be, based on the fact that video games are a thing, that they were invented at all, and then we can kind of contextualize and apply it to observations that we have, ideas that we have about the place in which we live. Now, to what you said about being rendered right around you, the reason I maybe think that it could be both is based on what you just said, your observation, that it's just a rendered environment as far as the eye can see, just to you, the player, which may be all there is. I mean, like in your reality, I'm an NPC or I'm a player, but only in the sense that we're interacting in this way. Maybe the game is all about you. Maybe this is just your game and that's it.
Right.
It's so interesting because really, even in your environment back there, like behind the dojo screen there, nothing needs to be rendered as far as the game's considered. You and I are sitting here having a conversation. You don't need to see what's out my window out here. It's just, this is all there is for this moment. And whenever I think of if it's a globe or a flat realm or a plane or something like that, I think though the game can render both. So let's say, for instance, that you wanted to hop on when they privatize space flights, if they ever do that, and you want to hop on the Virgin thing or whatever, and you shoot up to the sky, then maybe the game renders a globe underneath you, because that's the principle that you're going for, right?
Definitely. I absolutely, that's sort of what I figured out about manifestation, or one of the things that really made it speed up for me was realizing like, oh, okay, our beliefs really are everything, insofar as like what you're expecting is what will render.
Yes.
Because it like, it's not that there's nothing else there. There's infinite energy, infinite potentials, infinite energy patterns to decode. But I kind of explain it like, if somebody's speaking a message to me in Korean, I don't speak a word of Korean, so I can't receive it. I cannot translate it. But if they speak to me in French, I do know how to speak French, so I can translate that. So if I have no concept for the earth as anything but a globe, it's going to be very challenging, verging on impossible for me to render it as anything but a globe, because my expectation is so powerful, my belief is so powerful, that is the potential that I am able to lock into.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, they dig their heels in. Just like, let's say, any organized religion at all, you're going to dig your heels into that idea because now it's part of your identity. Especially people who worked on the space program, their family members. And David brought this up in the interview. He was brilliant about it. He said the Saturn rockets, the early program of NASA, was contracted out to like 100,000 different companies. So now what you've done is you've sent this idea out to 100,000 different companies, each having their own employees, each employee having their own families and circle that they're going to tell, hey, I worked on the rocket, and then now that's a story that gets passed down. My grandfather worked on the rocket that got men to the moon, And so now there's this, it's almost like a tulpa, it's like a creative waveform that, because you've told somebody, maybe it's true or not, but because you've told somebody something, now that idea has become something that a bunch of people are creating co-collectively. So this is also what's interesting about it, right? Because maybe to those astronauts, yeah, the world's round. Maybe to us, it's flat, or it's a realm, or it's full of possibilities. I think all things can exist at the same exact time, because if you think about it, the only thing that's real is what you're experiencing. You, the observer.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree with that. Totally.
It's just possible. I mean, and this is what's so fun, because I can nerd out and geek out with this stuff with you. So this is awesome. Well, okay. So if it is a simulation, or a video game of some type, what do you think the point of it all is?
I actually really believe that the point of it is that I think transformation and evolution are the name of the whole game. And that, like, the consciousness that is all, it just seems to me like, why would it just be static and never evolving? Like that, there's in I totally believe in infinity because it was shown to me when I was about 20 years old, and it was shown in such a way that like I was not trying to imagine it. It just I just sort of received a vision and an understanding. And so even the idea that infinity is like possibly not real is that doesn't make any sense to me. So when I think about infinity and infinite potentiality, infinite information, infinite consciousness, then why would it just be static? Of course it would interact with itself and it would evolve on all kinds of levels. And that's really what all of this is about. And so for us on Earth, I think it's like realizing your God self, but also forgetting your God self, because then you get to remember your God self and you get to choose everything in between. So we exist in a realm that includes polarity, and polarity in and of itself isn't necessarily bad. It's just, two extremes and then everything in between. And we get to be the third vantage point that then chooses between those extremes and everything in between. And so we're full of choice, we're full of free will, and it's all just for the purpose of evolving, I think.
Interesting, and I love it. Yeah. And it seems like, are you familiar with the X-Men at all? You know, the comic book, the X-Men? Okay.
Somewhat, yeah. I've seen the movies.
Okay, there you go. Are you familiar with the concept of their danger room? Are you gotten that deep into it? That's okay. I'm a super comic book nerd. No big deal. So there is a room inside Charles Xavier's mansion or whatever. That's a massive open space that has a bunch of digital holograms and a bunch of things so that they can train and hone their abilities, right? That's the whole point of the room. But what's interesting is all of it's fake, but the danger is real, right? So also the learning experience is real, and that's why it's called the danger room, I guess. But it's basically like a bunch of like robots and stuff that'll come out, and then Wolverine does his thing, and like Storm will do their thing, and they learn how to kind of work together. And so it's almost like if this is a simulation and that's what it is, then it's like that, right? It's like there's a space that has a bunch of technology in it that can make it seem extremely real. Again, even the danger is real. So if I walk outside and get stung by a wasp, which I did recently, then that hurts. It sucks. It's not ideal. I will put it that way. So this is what's interesting about the whole concept of a simulation as well. Is the danger or the experience is very, very real. If you walk out in front of a bus, no matter how much you think this is a simulation, you're going to get plowed into and you're going to get splattered all over the road. If you punch somebody in the face, whether you think they're an NPC or not, you're probably going to get your ass kicked. And so there's like a very real consequence, which can kind of negate the idea that this is all fake. And fake is, I mean, what would you say is fake? Like the difference between what is real in air quotes, and then what is fake, right? It's just what you can experience. It's just what feels real, even though our minds can tell us that we're in a simulation or that there's non-playing characters out here and that we're just here to learn. And the danger is real, even though it's fake. How do you feel about that idea?
Yeah, I feel like that's why it's hard to talk about these things, because almost like as soon as I start talking about them, I can feel people's like defenses coming up. And so I sort of dance around these words, like I refer to it as an illusion, but then I'm like, but it's not an illusion insofar as it's like, doesn't mean anything. It totally means something. The suffering that exists here is a real experience that is really being had. And that means that it's real, but that it's not the only real. It's a tiny, tiny sliver of what is real, and that there's a much bigger perspective available that, I don't know, helps. It's just sort of like the difference between having like a ground level eye view and having like a mountaintop eye view. You just have a different perspective and you're like, whoa. And neither is better than the other. They just offer a different experience.
Absolutely. That's perfect. It is perfectly put. I love that. Just like your time is currency thing, I will carry that one with me. The stuff you say, I hang on to, and because you're wonderful and you're insightful. Okay, so I've got a crazy one, but it's actually... So it's about NPCs, but it's kind of selfish in a way, and it's horrible. I've got to say this, like it's a horrible perspective. But I don't know. But I don't know who else to tell, right? Or if I even should tell it, because I fought with this quite a bit. Okay, in a system where, let's say that the Matrix or whatever the hell this is wants to control you into staying in line with the protocol, right? It wants you to breed, go to work, pay your taxes, work in cubicles, have this menial existence that perpetuates the machine, as it were, and it doesn't allow you any time for free thought or experimentation with psychedelics, perhaps, or mind-expanding experiences with people. Then one, I guess, deterrent or mechanism, if I were to create a game, would be homeless people. This sucks, right? Okay. So I'm not saying, I think I need to preface this and say that I'm not saying that all homeless people are NPCs or something like that. I'm talking about the idea that if I were a Matrix, I would plop little possibilities of destitute for you out there all the time. If you didn't fall in line, this is a possibility for you. You will be deemed crazy. You will be shunned on the street. You will be exposed to the elements. You will be in constant danger. You will not have enough to eat. You will be in a horrible survival mode constantly. All you have to do to avoid this situation, which you could fall into at any moment, would be just to fall in line, just do what we say, and you'll be okay. It's almost like the shittiest motivator that you can think of. What do you think of that?
That's really interesting. And what it makes me think of is a little bit like the sort of what you were talking about at the very beginning of our conversation with NPCs, as like them becoming animated as you come closer to them and interact with them, and also the Mr. Smith kind of thing. It just made me wonder, like, well, yeah, I mean, maybe everybody that you don't develop a deep interaction with is almost like a placeholder character, and that it's the simulation that speaks through them when you come close to them. So it's not that they don't have a soul, it's just that they're not permanently occupied by a soul. Like the consciousness comes into it in response to our proximity. And so that's what I immediately thought about. But I definitely think that kind of thing is part of the programming, is like figuring out people's like fear and pain points, and sort of sprinkling the simulation with evidence of that, so that you are always met with it. And I really think our fears, for the most part, are illusions. So I would never tell somebody to jump off a cliff because your fear is an illusion. Just go ahead, jump off a huge high cliff where you will fall to your death. It's not like that. But I think that those fears that hold us back from knowing the truth of our power, I think those are all illusions. And that as we sort of confront them and knock them down, they remind me of the boggarts in Harry Potter. Like, they take on whatever form is actually going to freak us out. So for one person, it might be like homelessness as a potential. For another person, it might be getting mugged or attacked in an alleyway. For another person, it could be bankruptcy, or, like, who knows? It's different things. But I think, I definitely think the simulation sort of like rears its ugly head to present itself, so that we don't pass through the barrier. But then when we pass through the barrier, it just goes away.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, okay. I think I see what's going on here.
It's interesting, right? Because I've noticed this as well. It's whenever you confront it and you say, Stephen Pressfield's the War of Art, he calls it the resistance. And so whenever something like that pops up in my mind as well, I'm like, nope, you're the resistance, fuck off. And it fucks off. It's not a problem anymore. It's not something that I experience. Same thing with like this jab. It's same thing with like all these potentials that they scare you with. There's a boogeyman out there. You're going to have to do this. You don't have to do any of that shit. That's the resistance. Or the Matrix are synonymous, I guess. That's the system trying to give you the opportunity to calm your mind, to stay on your course, right?
Yeah, and it totally, and like, I don't want to say retreat, because that's not really the right word, but retreat in a sense, deeper into your actual, I don't know, lately I'm calling it a God flame, and it feels like sort of like a diamond light, and it exists somewhere between our throat and our heart and our chest, and it's like the house of who we actually are, like who we actually are. And the more you retreat into that, the more you realize, like, I can just wave my hand through the illusion of this, this perceived threat or this fear, or this barrier, and it just dissipates like fog or mist. And I remember, like, oh, I'm so much more in control than, I was brought up to think.
Completely agree. And I've been playing with this a lot lately. That specific idea. I'm so glad you brought this up, because yes, it is something that I've been sitting there going, hang on, this is just the resistance. Like, go away. And I'm telling you, it's an instant flip of the switch, and it like recedes into the shadows. You can see this like, and it like powers away. Yeah, it's like this horrible. That's exactly what it feels like. And this is what's so interesting about this whole damn experience is you have way more control, and you understand this. I'm figuring this out, that you have way more control than you're being told, of course, than your parents would. They're part of the simulation too. They're the ones that told you that you got to work hard, and that if you don't have money, you're going to, be homeless. And then now there's the homeless thing. And I think though, if I could be incredibly revealing about this, homelessness to me and destitute it's something that, it hits me to my core, right? And this is one of the things. If one person goes hungry, that's the mark of our society. We are only as good as that one very last little kid in wherever that doesn't have a meal or a place to sleep tonight. That shit, it fucks with me on a really mental level. That's the one that will pull my heartstrings, especially animals. Anything animal, elderly, homeless, anything like that, it fucks with me hard. I can't even check that page. Nature is Metal. Have you ever seen that on Instagram or whatever? Okay, don't do it. It's basically just the natural world being the natural world. It is what it is, but it's gruesome, man. It's like lions ripping things apart, and like baboons eating other baboons' asses while they're still alive and screaming. It's horrible. It is horrible, but it is our reality, right? It is the nature of things. Which is another interesting part about the simulation. Like, why does that need to exist at all? Why do things like that have to exist? It is maybe one of those things just to show you who you really are, or something like that, or just to show you, hey, the world's pretty fucked up, and to keep you in almost like this fear state. Now, I've never been attacked by a lion, thank God. I've never had my ass eaten in a bad way while I've been screaming or whatever. But it seems like one of these things that's out there. It's possible, so therefore you have to have a reaction to it, or you don't. That's the thing, right? You just don't react to it.
Right. Or like, even that is really interesting, because it's like, well, why? I personally believe that we are hybrids, hybrid beings. So part of us, part of our genetic sequence comes from this planet, and part of it comes from elsewhere, whatever that means. Because when you look at our physical apparatus, like why aren't we covered with hair? Like, we can't just survive, right? Like we need very specific, we need shelter. We don't have claws. We're not equipped in the same way as the other creatures that exist here, but we also are like beautifully integrated to be here and to exist here. Like, the air is not toxic to us on its own without chemtrails and whatnot. Like, the environment is supportive and nourishing and nurturing to us. And so even that is a really interesting concept, because it's like, I believe nature is encoded with so many beautiful things that we can't get on such a densely packed level that our conscious minds can't understand. And it carries like a frequency of truth and harmony and well-being, and even more than that. And so why are, like, whenever I see information like that or hear of information like that seems to like freak us out about being in nature, it's like, but why is that there then? Like, it's to keep us like wanting to be in the safety of our homes and our weird artificial environments we create and separate from nature. Or this idea, like, I don't know if you remember that commercial a while ago that they would show people through I don't know, I think it was like a UV filter, and their skin was just like, bleh, like mottled with sun marks. And then they would put sunscreen on and it would suddenly look smooth, but it was like a weird black and white filter. It was a commercial that played a lot, well, at least in Canada. It was obviously a pro sunscreen commercial, but sunscreen has ingredients that are carcinogenic when they come into contact with sunlight.
Yeah.
How fucked up is that?
Yeah.
and I think about it, and I'm like, I heard a brilliant woman named Nadine Artemis talking about the sun one time, and she was like, of course we need to interact with the sun. That is what our bodies are designed to do. And I had this crazy download about the sun and the stars a while ago, realizing that they actually carry codes, and it's actually like, to me, it feels like, this might sound really weird, but like the sun is an oversoul. Like it is a consciousness, and we come from the sun. So our soul, it's an oversoul that's like a subsoul to an oversoul, like in this beautiful hierarchy. And the sun carries codes for us, just meaning like encrypted information that we don't consciously understand, but we receive it and interact with it anyway, and it's beneficial to us. And so like, why are we like, what is this ozone hole bullshit? Like, why is there a hole in our ozone? Who created the Industrial Revolution? Oh, it's just humans we're just irresponsible assholes and we ruin our planet. I don't know. I think we're all just forced into a system that, makes us do things that we don't want to do to survive, because we don't have the time to come up with solutions. And so now we have a hole in our ozone, apparently, and the sun will burn us. And I definitely get sunburns as a very white person, but I just don't wear sunscreen. I just try to not go out in the middle of the day when I know the sun is at its peak. Well, why would I cover myself up in a chemical that is carcinogenic when it interacts with the sun? As if like I have to protect myself from the natural environment that I was like created to experience. It's just weird.
It is weird. And I'm like you. I don't wear sunscreen either, and I'm in Texas, dude. But we, my wife is coming around to this idea, and my mom bitches at me all the time, but she bitches at me for a lot of things, so it's okay. I'm like, Mom, I'm like married. I've got a mortgage. I'll be like 39 in a couple months. It's okay.
I'm a grown man, Mom.
Yeah, I'm a grown-ass man, right? You can just dial it back. But it's out of that fear, though. That fear because it's conditioning, right? That's conditioning to, oh my God, you're going to get skin cancer. You're going to whatever. It's super survivable, so I'll be okay. But what's interesting about this whole concept as well is, yes, I like the Matryoshka doll spiritual sun soul thing, to where it's just all little, bigger or more condensed versions that then get really expanded. I think that's really cool. Have you done sun gazing? Do you ever do that?
I mean, I not necessarily, only because I don't live anywhere that I can do that in those like very specific hours, just because of the trees around where I live. But when I go to the beach, I definitely do it. But I sit for my morning meditation. I sit where the sun is going to beam on me, and I just sort of receive it that way. It's through the window and everything, but it nonetheless feels very, I don't know. It changes the quality of my meditation. If it's a cloudy day, I feel it.
I love it. And it's a great example to do. Yeah, so for the listener, sun gazing, it's an ancient practice. The Egyptians used to do that. A lot of ancient cultures. And it's where you just stare at the sun, but only 30 minutes after sunrise and 30 minutes before sunset. There's a specific window. Now, I saw a guy out there that's like, man, I just walk out and stare at the sun, and he's fine, but that's an interesting one, which it'll lead me to what I want to talk to you about hacking the matrix here in a minute with super abilities and things like that. But it is interesting that what you said, as well as how we've been pushed out of the natural environment to flee to our homes, to sit inside, to wear sunscreen, all of that based on humans that have torn up the planet in the past. You and I didn't do this, but we inherited an Earth that was torn up by humans that now we should be scared is falling apart because of other things. And it's almost like there's this past karma that's built into the story that you had nothing to do with, but you're paying consequences for. The most old school one, of course, would be Eve in the Garden of Eden. So the story, of course, of Adam and Eve, and she takes a bite of the apple, and that's why all childbirth is painful. But childbirth is painful for all mammals and all animals. So, I mean, why did everybody, that's the explanation for it, right? And my mom, God love her, very, very Christian. She says, there's going to be a long line in heaven of people ready to slap Eve in the face. I'm like, why the fuck would you do that, because she then caused the problems for all women after her. I'm like, no, it's just birth. That's just the way that it works. It's an odd idea. Same thing to there's a hole in the ozone layers because chicks in the 80s just had to get their Aquanet on, and hairspray, just fucked everything up for everybody. And so now you guys need to pay the price for it. But these people then will fly their private jets over to Davos to kind of create a world for us that tells us what we need to be doing.
Right. Or the recent G7 and masks for all the, for the formalities. And then we're just going to chum around and group hug and take group photo shots without our masks. And yeah, exactly. Like they all flew privately.
Yeah. You're not seeing them hop into coach.
Liars.
Yes, absolutely. And then there's thousands of examples. I'm glad you brought this up as well, of people putting their mask on right before they walk on camera. And there are then cameras that have been running, and you can hear a lady say, "Okay, everybody's fine," and they're all hugging up and grouping up together, and they say, "Okay, well, we're about to turn the cameras on. Everybody, make sure you social distance. Make sure you have your mask on while the cameras are on." It's blatant fuckery. And this is the thing, though. You and I see it, of course. We don't, and all of your soul space people, they see it. But it's interesting, all the NPCs that don't. So leading us back to that idea, what do you think then is the way that whenever we are confronted with a Mr. Smith type of a situation, because you could see it switch. And like you said, if you bring up anything like 9/11 or Flat Earth or any concept that goes against the mainstream, you could see them be taken over by a representative of the Matrix that's going to shut down this conversation.
Yes.
That to me, do you feel like that's when you know that you're on the right path?
Yeah, for sure. Totally. Like you're getting too close to the truth. I mean, yes. Yeah. And I feel like it extends so much to say. I feel like it extends into this whole call out culture fucking nonsense that I despise. And that, like my neighbor, we went for a walk the other day with our kids, and she was just asking me what I thought about like the trans agenda. And I was like, I believe that there are people who feel transgendered. I believe probably a lot of it is trauma related, but I can't say it all is. And I'm live and let live. Whatever you want to do, like however you feel is the authentic expression of yourself at any given time, as long as you're not hurting anybody and they're, as long as everybody's consenting and of an age to consent to what they understand to, then I love you. Be you. I think they're getting thrown under the bus personally. And she was like, "Oh, I'm so glad like that we can even have a conversation about it, because if I try to talk about it with anybody else, it's immediately like, you're transphobic, you're an asshole." And this is Canada. Like everybody's so polite here. It's ridiculous. And I feel like it even extends to that. And that when you go there, you're getting close to a truth and I think it's also a pain point. That's why I think a lot of it is a trauma response. It's like people just having pain they don't know how to deal with. And so they just like, lash out, and they put up this huge instantaneous defense wall so that the conversation can go no further. But I think it also is the simulation, like shutting it down, because you see people like just totally flip and become almost like, it almost does feel like possessed.
Yes, it's wild. It is. It's this representative in the Matrix going, and tapping them on the shoulder and then stepping in and saying, "Okay, we're not talking about this anymore. I'm going to make you feel like shit. I'm going to ostracize you from the group, and we're shutting this down." And they get really loud, which then, of course, depending on your constitution, kind of triggers a reaction in you, no matter how you feel about it, right?
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, I think trauma-based mind control is like the main control mechanism. And it we can get traumatized in so many ways, especially when we don't remember who we are and we don't realize this is a simulation and we can't see it from that mountain eye view. Then it feels really real. And I've certainly felt it, that sense of like, oh my God, what if people judge me? What if people misunderstand me? What if I get like kicked out of the group because I've said something that is considered, taboo and offensive and unacceptable at this time? Or like that's just one example of a layer of trauma, but I feel like that's all, like that's the main way that we get controlled, is triggering those deep fears that we have.
I think so too. And so the understanding about that we live in a simulation, or even the idea of it, that none of this is big capital letters real, but it's very still real to you. And so this is one thing people might say is, well, then why the hell even talk about it? Why even bring it up if it doesn't affect my day to day? If it doesn't, change anything? If I'd still step out in that bus or jump off of that cliff or get stung by a wasp or something like that, it still sucks. So what's the point in these thought experiments? What in your mind is the answer to that?
It just depends on what you want out of the game, I think. Like you could totally just not, you could just be like, yeah, okay, maybe it's a simulation and I'm just going to keep doing my thing. And that's amazing. That's totally, totally fine. My motivation is like, yeah, it's hacking the game. It's figuring out like how creative I can be, and yeah, what I can create with my understanding of how this whole simulation works. And it feels like, I don't know, lately I'm so almost like single-mindedly motivated to help people align with their mission and live it out. And by mission, I don't necessarily mean it has to be a career. It's just like purposeful living, because it's just made, I don't know, it's been night and day in my life to have that sense of purpose at all moments of every day. And so I feel like for me, my whole goal is to like rise as high as I can, as fast as I can, and bring as many people up with me as I can, and just like break the spell that keeps us penned in by those fears that I don't think are actually real, only because it's so amazing to bust through them and be like, holy shit, like, look what I can do.
Yes, that's it, right? And if anything else, it's just an altered way of thinking. It takes you out of this rigid, standard, comfortable, even an illusionary state, and just think about it in a different way. It's just sort of like changing your point of view. You know, if you're at a concert and you're stuck behind a pillar and you're like, damn it, I wish I could see that concert. Well, get up and move. You know, it's like, just change your point of view. Yeah. It's, well, life's gotten a little boring. Think of it as a simulation. Think of it as a flat earth. It'll pep up your step a little bit, and look around your world and really kind of look, is there anything beyond what I can see? Does China even exist right now? I'm not there. I'm not seeing it. It could just be an idea.
Oh my God, it's so true. I think about that a lot lately because I got really, really bugged out on all the vaccine shedding stuff for a while. And my dad and my two sisters both got it. And that was really, really tough on me because I was sort of feeling like, almost like I was pre-grieving them. Like our paths were just taking different directions. And I think almost all of my like in real life friends have gotten it. And yeah, just feeling like, according to the stuff that I'm hearing in alternative news media, that the future looks grim for everybody, or most people who've gotten it. But then there were occasionally some people who are super high vibrational, like I call them light workers of any kind, who were coming for Akashic readings and would be like, I got it. Like I either didn't know or I really felt guided to, and I would tune into their field and I wouldn't feel anything. Like it didn't feel like there was any alteration, like their soul was completely present. Some people, when I would tune in, I could feel like feels like rogue proteins starting to fuck with their system. So it made me start really wondering about all that. And then ultimately I was just kind of like, yeah, but why is any of this information coming out anyways? Why is this so easy to find for alternative researchers who are driving themselves crazy? Like one of the shows I love, but I can hardly watch, is The Last American Vagabond. On Rockfin. It's with Ryan Christensen or something like that. Anyway, he does these like huge, like 3-hour deep dives every couple days. And he's finding all this information, bringing it forward. And he's like so frustrated because it's so accessible, this information, and people aren't paying attention to it. So I kind of like had to pull back, and also I'm going to have a baby, so I can't really ruminate on how terrible the world is right now. But in pulling back, I was sort of like, wait though, why is all this information so accessible? Kind of like that Nature is Meta Love, or that Instagram account you're talking about. Like, why is this out there? Why do we know about like Fauci and the email scandals? Why is it public that Bill and Melinda Gates are separating? All these things that we hear about, I'm like, they absolutely have the ability to snuff out any information they want completely snuffed out.
Yep.
So why is this coming out? I think it's because they know the power of our fears. They know the power of our fears. So for somebody like me to be afraid that my loved ones who have chosen to get vaccinated are going to be at risk that's powerful. Mm-hmm. So I just had to be like, what if I just disengage from this and just let life carry on? Because like we said at the end of our last conversation, like, oh, then you look outside and there's my husband and my daughter playing in the backyard, and actually everything's normal right now.
Yes. In your garden, it's normal because that's all you have control over. That's what you, and your body and your soul and your mind and your spirit is your garden. It's all an extension of you.
Yeah.
So I agree with you because I've had family members, same thing. I sent them all the videos. I'm like, just look at this before you make your decision. It's of course your decision. Yep. Just look at it. And even with that, or some stuff I would send, my mom was like, oh, it got deleted. I was like, Mom, remember when I said you need to watch this quick because it's going to get deleted because it's riddled with truth and they don't want that. She's like, well, we didn't watch it. Yeah. Like, okay, great. So, yes, I do feel that is what is going on as well. And it's the resistance. It knows your fears. It knows what you're scared shitless of. And it's getting loose your energy or causing you to keep away or to hold back on what your true purpose here is. And as long as you don't let it do that and you say fuck off and it fucks off, that's great. That's the resistance at work. You just, it plays dirty and that's it, right? And now it'll hit you at your family. It's like the boss level, everything going on right now. It's like the final
boss level.
Yes. Yeah. It's the weirdest shit. And even the idea that if this is a simulation, and I've talked about this before, but we haven't discussed it, that maybe history doesn't exist. Maybe you're just plopped right in here to have this experience and you were just told that dinosaurs were a thing and then an asteroid hit a long time ago and that, the car was invented in whatever they used to look like this, but now they look like this now. And all of it's like fabricated,
I 100% believe that. I 100% believe that. Every piece of evidence that we have to support anything in history, even our own memories, only exists in the present. There's only the now moment. There is no past. There is no future. There's like a million potentials on either side. There are a million pasts, a million futures. We get to constantly be choosing our own adventure, but from this centered now moment, extending into our concept of the past, extending into our concept of the future, and the whole point of it is to feed who we believe we are and what we are creating in this now moment. I totally believe that there is no past. Yeah,
and to make decisions based off of that information, right?
And yeah, exactly. And this like whole thing, like, oh, if we don't learn, history will repeat itself. Like, well, if we keep talking about history repeating itself and keep like insisting that this is how history went, and I think again, that's a hard thing to talk about because it's very conceptual and it gets confusing for people. And like somebody could feel like I'm saying that something that you experienced wasn't real. And that's not what I'm saying at all. I experienced that my son died 5 years ago, but I only experience it from this moment now. Even my memories, I only interface with from this moment right now. That is a construct of my consciousness in this moment, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen. It doesn't mean there's not a ton of pain around it. It doesn't, and it certainly it informs who I believe I am and how I exist in the world. So it's not to say that the things that people have been through, like, one of my big fears is that somebody who's lived through some kind of Holocaust or atrocity would feel like I'm denying that happened. In no way, because right now, the influence of that perception that took place in a different now moment, and there is no different now moment, it's real. So therefore it's real. It's just that it's not real as in it solidly happened in the way that we kind of are led to perceive, like, oh, dinosaurs existed and cars were invented, like you said. Like, nope, there's only right now. Cars exist right now, and we have a story that dinosaurs were real.
Yeah, which I love dinosaurs. I think the concept of them is great. I think it's fun. You know, it's a childlike wonder thing, just like going to space. Like, I think it's cool. It sucks that it isn't real, but it'd be fun, right? And so whenever you are presented with this kind of stuff, it is almost like it is why it exists, rather, for you to have the experience and to create yourself the way that you want to. So you have to have a past to know what, I don't know, to put your right foot in front of your left, you know, stuff like that. Just simple mode of transportation things, simple how to open a door, how to write, how to read. And so those kind of memories or experiences that you had create who you are, so then you can create your future. This is what's interesting about the human psyche as well, is that we remember the past, we're aware of what's going on now, but the future's a blank slate, and it's all potentialities, which is interesting. It's maybe that's, you know, a mechanistic thing built into the simulation so that we don't screw it up, or so that we can have whatever we want. So therefore, we never screw it up, because anything that happens is what we chose, is what we decided to do, to choose your own adventure, just like you said. Okay, so what do you think about the idea of like superhuman abilities and things like that? Now, why I'm asking is, let's say that maybe the ascended masters and like Jesus and all that kind of stuff, maybe they could heal the blinds, because being blind in this reality is just a code, or it's a glitch in the matrix, perhaps. And they're able to go in and rewrite your code, you know, in a literal sense. And then boom, now you have sight turned on, basically. Or if you have a bum leg or something like that, that's just a code in the matrix, and they can fix that. Maybe that's what they were here to do. It lends to the idea as well as like extraterrestrials or something like that. Maybe they have the ability to do these things, to kind of hack the matrix a little bit. They're just a program built into it to aid or to alter in any way. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I totally believe in superhuman abilities. I definitely jive with that sort of description of, you know, what we would consider miraculous healing. One of the pieces of information I've gotten through the priestess codes is about that kind of healing, where it's all about your vibrational frequency. And so when you have a certain frequency, and as I'm saying this, I'm aware, like even the word frequency people might be like, what are you talking about? But it's like your level of consciousness and what it can believe in, what it can conceptualize, but not just conceptualize as an idea, but also then like fully integrate, like, so that you're, you know, that's just how you be in the world. So if you have a level of consciousness that believes in an integrated way that our DNA is a divine code, it's a light code, it's not even, you know, it's ultimately not even physical matter. It's like, it's just light that's vibrating, and that we can fine tune those vibrations very, very easily and subtly. Then your being is going to vibrate in, like, as a match to that concept, like it's going to reflect that in its own vibrational rate. And then in your field, so somebody like Jesus, I think, believed that and understood that. So his energetic countenance was such that he was vibrating in a way that allowed for wholeness and perfection, the original like blueprint to exist. And then the people that came into his field and could match that vibration through their belief in him could receive healing. And I often think about that. I guess, I don't know if you could call it a parable. Can you call biblical stories parables?
I guess so. The parable is just anything that I think is a story that then has a moral or type of result. Like, I mean, what's that? Mother Goose and shit. That's a parable, right?
Right. So, okay, like maybe it's a parable, maybe it's just a story. But the part in the Bible that where somebody touched his robe as he was walking by and received healing just from touching his robe. So I think it was a woman, and she didn't ask he didn't give her his blessing. And then some of his entourage were like, how dare you? You're not allowed to touch the Christ or whatever. And he was like, my brothers, it's fine. She received the healing, and it wasn't through me, it was through the power of her faith. And I think it's because, so he's kind of like when you thrum a guitar string and then you have another guitar in the same room, you don't even have to touch it, the string starts vibrating. I think it's like that. So as we expand in our consciousness and really stabilize that within ourselves of like completeness and health and well-being and like deep immovable worthiness and self-love and self-forgiveness and grace and all that stuff, then we're getting closer to our wholeness, and we radiate that wholeness. And then somebody who comes into our field on any level who is able to calibrate to that also becomes a match to some extent or another to that wholeness. And I think that's what superhuman abilities are, and they just manifest differently for different people. And I totally believe that like there are probably other beings that like just get that shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
like interdimensionals or extraterrestrials or whatever. Like they just already know that, and they're like, "Aw, humans, you're so lost in your concept of healing."
Yeah, like how we can build computers, but raccoons can't. We're like, "Aw, you got opposable thumbs and anything, but you're just trash pandas."
Right?
That's adorable.
Yeah.
And we'll probably wrap it up here, but I wanted to say then too, another superpower is just making people feel better and raising the vibration of their frequency, right? And so you'll have somebody that you walk into a room, NPC or not, they're bummed out. Well, you can just with a smile or buy them a cup of coffee or something, any of the sign-off shit that I've got, stop littering, shit like that, get out of the left-hand lane, people hate that. Then you can change people's vibrations, and that to me is a superhuman ability. That's great. So everybody has the potential to do this.
Absolutely. And you can do it for free. It can be part of your career or not. It's literally the gift that just keeps on giving. Like it just echoes out and out and out and ripples out and out and out and out and out. It makes such a huge difference.
Yeah. My favorite saying in Spanish is puerta te bien que nada te cuesta. And that simply means just being good or being nice doesn't cost anything. And that's absolutely right. Amy, thank you so much. Did you want to tell us about the new stuff that you got going on before we wrap? And of course, I'll link all the ways to find you in the show notes.
Thanks. Okay, so I have, I just finished up the live component of the psychic activation course. So if you are wanting to understand psychic abilities in a way that is demystified, but also still totally fucking mind-blowing and amazing, and learn ways to calibrate to that and awaken it in yourself, then this is a great course for that. That's the whole entire intention. And so that is available now as just a self-paced, self-study course. And I'm doing a mission. I can never remember it because I flipped between the words so much. It's a mission activation mastermind. So it's amazing so far. The conversations that are happening are next level. Some people are like, I don't know what my mission is or my purpose, but I know I can't go back. Like I know I'm getting closer to it. And other people are like, oh, I'm on fire. I've got a friggin' project. I know what I'm doing. And it's just really beautiful, but it's a space to ask your questions, get support, share support, elevate together. And we have a call every other week that are recorded, and you get access to it for life. And I basically just channel some, like I call them light codes, but they're just like clarity and sort of illusion dispelling truth as it comes through to me around many aspects to do with mission. My next one that I'm so excited to talk about is money, because it took me forever to figure that shit out. It made me so mad when people would say money is just energy, and now I'm like, money is legit just energy.
Yeah, it's current C, right? It's just like a current and a C. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just a really great place to connect with people who are like-minded and wanting to be here on purpose and be in community together. So that is currently open. And then I'm also opening up, I think I just opened up 2 spots for private mentorship for anybody who just wants to like quantum fucking leap through all those illusory fears that have been holding them back.
So cool. You do just such amazing stuff. I mean, you're incredible, and your shows just keep getting more and more amazing. That one with Brandon that you just had, I mean, love the name, first of all, but damn, dude, that guy was incredible. About how he said about the butterfly and the caterpillar thing, that's how I described this show. I was like, that spoke right to me. It's incredible. So
good.
Keep plugging away, man, and I will definitely link your show as well as any ways to find you and anything you want in the show notes as well. So you guys, y'all know Amy, she's Soul Tribe, so just go check her out. She's absolutely wonderful. Check out Soul Space on Facebook. And Amy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I always love talking to you, Brandon.
You are welcome anytime. We will do it again soon.
Yes.
A massive thanks to Amy Belair for coming back on the show for an incredible discussion, guys. NPCs, simulation, we love this stuff, and it's fun to nerd out with somebody else who loves it just as much as well and has some incredibly insightful observations to make. So all the ways to find her will be linked in the show notes, guys. Go check out her podcast, Third Eye Awakening, for sure. Go check out the Facebook group that we're part of over there, Soul Space on Facebook, for you guys that are still kind of kicking around on that platform. Go check her out. Everything's amazing. For this show, guys, find us at expandingrealitypodcast.com. That is where the links to all of the socials will be found, as well as the YouTube link for this video in particular and all of the other ones. So go over there and check that out. Patreon's up there as well. If you like the show, if you find it valuable, go ahead and throw a little down on that. That would be much love appreciated. So go out into your week, guys. Pick up a piece of litter. Go ahead and don't litter in the first place. Get out of the left-hand lane. That would be wonderful. Buy somebody in line behind you a coffee or a meal or a bottle of water, just something. Roll around with a few bottles of water extra on you for the hot months to give out to folks that don't have it or that look thirsty, whatever. Anyway, I also just go out into your week this week, guys, strong and powerful. Take a look at some NPCs in your world and see what you think about the whole idea. It's just a fun thing to think about. And while you're out there doing that, just go ahead and be good to one another. Thank y'all so much for listening. We'll see you next time.